We should probably do some sort of introduction. Like, hi, everybody. I'm Patricia.
I'm Lee.
And we're weird as fuck.
Yeah, I suppose you probably should, I guess so.
Yeah. Because someday we might be famous. Okay. So. Okay, so last week we talked about simulation theory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was weird.
It was weird. And you said that you would be more convinced if you saw some of the videos or heard some of the stories independent of...
Yeah, I'm a more visual kind of guy. I like to see videos and see kind of somewhat proof.
Now, obviously, on the podcast, we can't show people's videos without their permission.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I did scour the web and searched for any glitches in the Matrix that I thought would be compelling evidence. There are thousands of them out there. Thousands. I only picked a few. And unfortunately, most of these came from websites that anonymize their content. So I can't give credit to the people who put them out there. So they came from Thought Catalog, Reddit, Board Panda, Distractify, BuzzFeed, and Quora. So those were my top sources for these stories. And if you read any of those websites, obviously you're going to see maybe some of these stories because these were the best ones I could find. Just, you know.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check them out.
But yeah, anyone who goes to our website can see the links that I posted for these particular stories. And I do really encourage you to put in glitches in the Matrix and hit the video search. And there's some weird shit out there. Some really weird shit out there.
So describe some of the weirdest ones you've seen in the videos and describe the video.
Well, I'm not going to do that because you know me, I'm a better writer than I am a talker. And to be able to describe a video that I watched several weeks ago with any sort of intelligence is just asking for you to mock me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read some of the stories that I found from those websites that I mentioned. And then after we're done recording, you can go check out some of the videos that are out there. Like I said, there are thousands of them.
So hopefully all our guys that are watching our show, listening to our show, will check them out too.
Yeah, all 50 of you.
Right now.
If you're listening to this, search glitches in the Matrix. You won't be disappointed. So I'm just going to read these verbatim that people wrote in to these other websites. And like I said, unfortunately, I can't give credit to the writers because they were anonymized. But if this is you, thank you. You're a hero.
Well, the webs just make fun of people so bad they don't want their name out there because they don't want to get fucked with constantly.
Oh, I know. I wrote a question into Quora. Oh my God, people attacked me left, right, and center.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And my question wasn't even controversial. It's how do you connect to a Gen Z as a parent of a non-Gen Z and get them to engage? I was accused of everything from being a bad parent to letting my kids walk on me. Spoiler alert, they don't. They're great kids. I just want to be able to communicate more effectively with my children.
You have to text.
That actually seems to work really well. So,
because that's the way they communicate now.
But anyway, back to our stories. So this one, I would love to be able to tell you who it came from, but I'll just dive in. This writer says, I had a subjectively long, involved dream where I was a vendor in a fish market. I remember getting up early, dressing, doing a whole morning routine, going to get tea, heading to the docks, buying fish, loading them into a cart, going to get rice, then haggling for ice, buying some less fresh fish while I was at it, then going to a market to my stall, setting up and selling fish all day. It was incredibly real. I talked to friends, smoked nasty cigarettes, haggled customers, ate lunch, had tea, and just lived through the day. At the end of the day, I cleaned up, counted my cash, paid the stall rent, went home, cooked some of the fish I hadn't sold, sling with some veggies and rice that I traded for, drank more tea, relaxed, then drew a hot bath, soaked, and smoked some more cigarettes before I went to bed. The next morning, I woke up refreshed and ready to go down to the docks to buy a fresh catch. Except I was in my house with my wife, my truck parked outside, and it was Saturday. There was no work. My wife and I were geared up to go skiing in Oregon, and the car was already packed. Here's the weird thing. In the dream, I was single and a smoker. I'm married and a non-smoker. And the whole dream was in fluent Chinese. The effortless kind of fluency that only comes from a lifetime of speaking it. And I had been a Chinese man. In reality, I'm a big, hairy, white dude, somewhat fluent in Spanish and knowing a little bit of Russian, but I've never spoken Chinese, ever.
So does he know how to speak Chinese now?
No. But he knew he was speaking Chinese in the dream and he understood what he was saying.
That's weird. That'd be cool if you woke up and you could speak fluent Chinese after that.
There have been stories of people who've suffered brain trauma who have woken up speaking languages that they couldn't speak when they went unconscious.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
That's weird. Which could also be another issue with programming.
There's another weird as fuck episode.
Next week, no. That'll take a little bit more research. So this is an issue that I've actually personally dealt with. It's called jamais vu. So you've heard of déjà vu, being in a situation where you're sure something has happened before. This thing has happened before.
I think everybody has done that sometime or another.
Jamais vu, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly, is the opposite. So you're doing something familiar and suddenly you don't know what you're doing. You don't know where you are. Everything is wrong. I was taking the boys to Boy Scouts a few years ago, and I was driving down the same road that I'd driven down dozens of times, and I suddenly didn't know where I was. I was right in front of the building where we were meeting at, and I didn't recognize it.
That's weird.
It was scary. My first thought was, holy shit, I have Alzheimer's. But you wouldn't be aware. When you have Alzheimer's, I don't think you're necessarily aware of the confusion at the time.
You wouldn't know what's going on if you had Alzheimer's.
You would think. So this person says that they had jamais vu twice during the period of a week during some work-related stress, which, maybe stress is a part of it. On both occasions, they say they were driving their car in a perfectly familiar surrounding near their home when suddenly they had no idea where they were or where they were going. It was like being instantly teleported into a foreign country, except they were at home. It only lasted for a few seconds, but it was like a glitch in their code.
That is weird.
This person writes in, about 10 years ago, I was walking my dog in the park. It was a nice sunny morning with lots of dew on the grass. So wherever you walked, it would leave a path of dark grass where the dew was knocked off the blades. It was impossible for anyone, or a dog, to walk through the grass without leaving a trail. We've all been in those situations when you go out into the park first thing in the morning.
Yeah, it flattens out and stays that way for a long time.
Okay, that's not the weird part. So they say, Mr. Dog and I were strolling along, and he's ahead of me, pissing on bushes, sniffing stuff.
Being a dog.
Being a dog. When he stops cold, his hackles go up, and he looks across the park and growls. I look to where he's staring, and there's a guy with a dog about 100 yards away, near a large tree. His legs are moving like he's walking. The thing is, even though his legs are moving, his speed doesn't seem to match up with the speed of his legs. Kind of like seeing somebody moonwalking from a distance. Anyhow, I write it off to perspective or humidity or something and keep walking. The dog, however, won't walk with me and stays rooted to the spot, making this high-pitched whine. I walk back to the dog and look over to where the guy was, and he's still in just about the same spot, still moving funny. So I decide to check out this odd walking dude. I hook up the dog to the leash and we start walking across the wet grass to where he is. Side note, unless it's a dog part, keep your dog on the leash. What?
What?
What if another dog attacks your dog? What if your dog gets scared and run off? What if your dog runs into traffic? What if your dog sees a kid with a snack and gets excited and goes for the snack? Keep your dog on the leash. There are laws for a reason. Back to our story.
Getting off
So
topic.
we're walking across the rec grass to where the guy is, thinking our dogs might play together. My dog is not happy. He's clinging to my left leg like Velcro as we make our way across the field. As we progress, I notice that it appears the guy is actually walking away from me, as I don't seem to be gaining on him. At this point, I still don't think anything is odd until I get to the place where I first see him, the large tree. I look down at the ground and I see this almost perfect circle about 10 feet in diameter of dry, dew-free grass. The thing is, there are no footprints leading to or from this circle. The dog, on the other hand, is flipping his shit and is looking at where we just came from. I look up and see that the guy isn't ahead of me. He's behind me on the other side of the grassy field, and he's standing just about where I was standing when I first saw him. So they've switched places. He has a dog. He's staring at me. He hooks his dog to the leash and starts walking toward us. Needless to say, I freaked the fuck out and we cut sideways out of the park and down to a populated street.
Why?
I kept looking back but didn't see him or his dog again. After telling the story to a couple of friends, they speculated that there was some kind of refraction of light or optical illusion, which gave me the impression that I was seeing another person, but I was actually seeing myself reflected in mist or fog or something.
Bullshit.
Yeah, because dogs regularly freak out over refracted light.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I thought that one was really interesting.
That would be weird. I would have stayed there, though.
I wouldn't have. I'd have been, I'm with him. I couldn't have gotten out of that circle fast enough, which also makes me wonder, you know, the circle of dew-free grass, is it because there's something warm underneath? Is that where, like, maybe a sewer line is coming up closer to the surface and it's keeping the ground warmer, or?
There would still be footprints out of the circle where you left.
Unless there was a glitch in the Matrix or he entered a time warp.
Yeah. He levitated.
Or he levitated. Ooh, that's good. Maybe he wasn't moonwalking. He was hovering just above the surface of the ground. I like that. You write the next episode.
He is a ghosty man. Could have been a ghost.
Maybe it was a ghost. The ghost of a dude walking his dog in the park. Think if there are worse things to do with your afterlife.
They get like people that haven't passed on that go do the same thing over and over and over and over and over.
God, I hope I'm
day.
not going to work.
God, that would fucking suck.
Oh my God. That's
Or-
not out. That's
Or if you drowned or burned to death and then you're
And you
doing
have to
that
relive
over
that.
and over and over, that would suck so bad.
No, please, if you're listening to this, come and exercise my house. Don't let me do that.
We've had some weird ghost experiences here.
We'll cover that in another episode.
Yes, we will. We've had some weird shit go on here.
We really have. And I don't know if the camera incident is a glitch in the Matrix or if it's a haunting. That one's interesting.
Yeah, it could be with the glitch if it actually disappeared and then it reappeared somewhere else. But why would they do that? I guess it pissed me off if that was why they were doing it.
Maybe. So our next story starts like this. So I guess a little context is in order. My girlfriend and I had been together for about a year at the time. No big problems. We're both pretty relaxed people. Never had a big fight. Never had trust issues. The whole shenanigan. One day I was out in front of my apartment building smoking a cigarette. This was before we lived together. I had seen her the night before, had a nice dinner, gone out to a bar, and then gone to my place, after which she took a taxi home. So I'm standing out in front of my apartment building and she pulls up in a taxi. I wasn't expecting her and was pleasantly surprised to see her. I put out my cigarette, smiled, and walked up to her saying something like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" in a very friendly way. She scowls at me and slaps me square across the face. Obviously, I'm confused and at a loss for words, so I just kind of looked at her. She never said anything. She just barged past me into the apartment. I followed her up to my apartment, asking her what was happening the whole way. She goes into my apartment, grabs her bag and some of her stuff that she left there, threw a few things at me, broke a glass or two, and knocked down a bunch of stuff on the shelf. She calls me a pig, says she knows everything, says that I've broken her heart. I'm trying to figure out what's going on, obviously. And she stops on her way out. When I touch her sleeve, she glares at me again and slaps me. She tells me something like, "I hope I never see you again," and storms out. I followed her to the street and watched her get into a cab, and she drove off. The street was pretty empty. This was like 8 or 9 a.m. I watched her drive off. At this point, I'm lost for words, scared and sad. Then, as I'm watching the cab drive away, someone hugs me around the waist from behind. I turned around, and she's standing there in her running clothes. She was wearing heels and a leather jacket when she got into the cab. I went completely pale. She said hi in her usual happy-go-lucky tone. When she noticed my look, she asked me what was wrong. I spun around. The taxi was gone. It had literally driven away 5 seconds earlier. There was no way it could have turned around in that time and had it could have turned in that time. All the lights were red, so it couldn't have gone through the intersections. I didn't say anything to her. I just ran upstairs. Her bag was gone. Things were still broken. My door was still wide open. I told her what had happened. We were both momentarily confused. There's no way I could have mixed up her with someone else, and she's an only child. We had security check the cameras, and sure enough, there was me following a girl to my apartment. The angles weren't great, and the film wasn't great quality, but it was pretty easy to see me and my face. Hers was always hard to make out, but it looked a hell of a lot like her, but there was never a clear shot. There was no way it could be the same girl. It still freaks me the fuck out, and we don't talk about it ever.
Yeah, I would believe if something like that happened to me, man. That would be like, that's fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, it would be one thing if she came back like a half an hour later and you could say, you're just crazy.
Yeah.
Just show up at my house, scream at me, and then take your stuff away and then come back all happy.
I'm surprised he told her.
Well, I mean, he's watching her drive away when she hugs him from behind. I would tell you a story like that. I mean, how do you not?
Yeah, I guess it depends on how long they've been. I thought they were just dating.
Yeah, he said they'd been together about a year.
No, they've been a while. Yeah.
So, sounds like a pretty solid relationship. And
I thought it was just like a first date or something like that.
Like that episode of Nurse Jackie we just watched where he got stabbed on their first date.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have not given you my phone number after that. No, we'd have been gone.
Yeah.
So this one happened in early 2000 when I was working at a juvenile detention center in a small town in Oklahoma. I was working nights at the time, and I went to work at 9 p.m. This one night when I arrived for work, my supervisor looked confused and asked me what I was doing there. I said, "I work tonight." He said, "But you called in a few hours ago saying you were sick." I was a bit confused and said it must have been someone else and they got the message wrong. After everyone else showed up for work that night was a bit more weird, but we carried on as usual and assigned everyone their places for the night. I went to work in the control room, where I usually work. The control room is the center of the prison that has direct control over the cameras, doors, phones, and everything else. After I relieved the guard on duty and settled in for the night, I looked at the messages that said that I had called in. It said I'd called in at 6:50 and said that I had gotten sick while out cleaning up after the storm. There'd been a storm the night before, and it was a bit bad, but not anything I had to go out and clean up after. It was a little weird. The supervisor came into the control room about that time. He was also a friend of mine outside of work, and we started to talk about it and how odd it was. I decided to call my wife at home and tell her about it while I was still sitting there. I picked up the phone and dialed. After 2 rings, a man picked up the phone and with a raspy voice said, "Hello?" I didn't know what to say for a few seconds. I looked at the phone to make sure I'd dialed the right number, and I had. After a few seconds, the person said again, "Hello?" in the same raspy voice. I said, "Hello? Who is this?" "This is Taylor. Who is this?" the person said. My head started spinning because my name is Taylor. I said in almost a scream, "Where is Anne?" He said, "Anne's in bed. Who's this?" I dropped the phone and told my supervisor to ring me out. I had to get home, and I took off towards the door. I could hear Dave pick up the phone behind me and say hello, followed soon after by, "What the fuck?" rather loudly. I ran to my car and drove home faster than was legal. My mind was racing the entire time. I busted through the door and my wife was sitting there watching TV and was shocked at me being home. I asked her who was there and she said no one. After a rather long talk with my wife, I went to call the prison to tell them what was going on, but the phone was dead. I went back to work and came in, and Dave was acting weird and asked me, "How the hell are you doing this?" He told me that when I left, he picked up the phone and the person on the other end sounded like me. He kind of freaked out and hung up the phone. A minute later, as he could see my car leaving the parking lot, I had called back from home and asked what the fuck was going on. He said that I was a bit irate and that I was sick and didn't feel like playing these games, and was telling him to stop prank calling, and hung up. After convincing him I had no idea what was going on, we went back to work. Later, I found out that the phone line for my area had been knocked down the night before by the storm. There was no way a phone call could have come from my house. This is absolutely the strangest thing that has ever happened to me.
That would be fucking weird.
So, glitch in the matrix. 2 different realities, 2 different simulations crossed over. In one, Dave is sick because he's been out in the storm. Or Taylor. And in the other one, Taylor's fine and trying to work, and somebody's screwing with him. I feel sorry for both Taylors in this story. And poor Anne, can you imagine sitting there on the couch and your husband comes in, "Where's the guy?" And she's like, "What guy?"
I ain't seen no guy.
First of all, I'm not cheating on you. And second, holy shit, there's a guy in the house? What are you talking about? So, yeah.
That's weird as fuck.
I told you there were lots of stories out there. Okay. So this next one reads, 8 years ago, while I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment by myself with 2 cats, I had a girlfriend who I will name Elsa for this story. He's a Frozen fan, I can tell. Elsa lived 45 minutes away on her college campus. Most weekends, she would drive into town and stay at my place until she had class again on Monday. We did regular things as we didn't get to see much of each other. We liked to spend time alone together, watching movies, playing games, or the like. Please keep in mind that neither of us were drug or alcohol users, and I have a good job and I don't want to risk losing it. And she just simply never cared for intoxicants, nor were either of us on any kind of medication. That's important. You'll see why in a minute. So here's the scene. It's Saturday night, 11 p.m. Elsa and I are sitting on the couch watching a movie. I don't remember which one. We're dressed, sober, and alert, as we had slept in that morning and we're feeling pretty good. We're chatting, laughing, and talking. The TV is illuminating our immediate area, and I kept the light on in the kitchen to provide some ambiance. My cats are asleep in their favorite chair. All is well with the world. Everybody is safe and comfortable. Suddenly, without any kind of warning or inkling, the jump, as I have come to call it, happened. You know, when you're watching dialogue in a movie and they're using 2 cameras to film, then they switch from camera to camera to capture the one speaking? It's seamless. With no clipping, interruption, fading, or transition. It was that sudden. We were having a good time together in the living room when, the next instant, I found myself sitting at the foot of my bed, clothes removed, in the dark. For about 1/2 of a second, a million thoughts entered my mind. Had something fallen off the wall and hit my head? Did I have a seizure? Was I dreaming the whole time? Where's Elsa? Then the scary part. I turned to my right, and Elsa is also sitting at the foot of the bed next to me, clothes removed. Her eyes are the size of golf balls, and she's trembling. I realize I am as well. I try to speak, and I ask her if something's happened, but I'm so frightened I only stutter. After looking around the room and realizing we're alive, she managed to ask me what happened. I didn't want to answer in case it was just me, and I didn't want to come off as nuts, so I just looked at her. That's better, dude. Just stare blankly.
I will just stand here and do nothing.
After a pause, she started asking me again if I turned off the lights or removed our clothes or if I knew what was going on. I didn't. Neither of us has experienced grogginess or confusion before the event. Furthermore, we didn't experience any sensations other than fear and confusion after it. No aches or pains, no bumps, bruises, or cuts. I reached for my phone to call my mom and see if a doctor would be appropriate. That's so cute. Let's call your mom. I noticed that it's now 3 a.m. In that sudden instant, that instantaneous change of scene, 4 hours had passed. Everything in the house had been turned off, and we'd been stripped naked. We went to the ER as my mom's fear was a gas leak. Leave it to mom to jump to that rather than saying, holy fuck, you were abducted by aliens. That would be my call. If one of the boys called me, I'd be like, aliens, you've been probed. No signs of toxin or injury were found on either of us. Elsa made an appointment for a CAT scan, which also came back as expected. Negative. I explored possibilities like a gas leak, poisoned consumer goods like our soda or fast food, neurological malfunctions, and more. But the one thing that has always bothered me was the fact that Elsa and I lost and acquired the time at the exact same instant, 4 hours apart. Neither of us witnessed anything that the other didn't. There were no lights, no lingering effects, and for weeks I kept bringing it up with her, just hoping one of us would remember something. I browsed forums for all types of sites, searching for answers. Every time I asked Elsa, she would get scared at the memory and beg me to just let it go. But I couldn't. So can you imagine that? You're sitting there watching TV and all of a sudden you blink and you're naked in another room.
I've had time like you gotta doze off, and I mean, long time has gone by, but they weren't sleepy or tired or doing any of that kind of stuff.
No, but have you ever done that where you dozed off and you woke up in a different part of the house?
When I used to sleepwalk, yeah.
Did you
When I was
turn
a
off
kid.
everything and strip naked?
No, but I did move furniture in the living room and do all kinds of weird shit when I was sleepwalking.
Right, but that's explainable because you know that you've been sleepwalking.
I didn't know I did it.
Well, no, but you knew you'd been sleeping, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in their case, they just blinked and suddenly the world was different.
That would be weird.
And they did it at the same time. If it's just one person that does it.
Yeah, especially two people makes it even, and they're both naked and they both experience the exact same thing. That's what really makes it strange.
Yeah, and Colin has talked about that, where we have memories of his childhood, and he's just got big blank spaces.
Yeah, he doesn't remember
Anything.
any of it at all.
Yeah, I worry that that's because of the time he fell out of the bunk bed head first. Love you, Colin. But that was really compelling to me because it was just so strange that he just suddenly lost 4 hours. And I thought it was just adorable that he called his mom.
That's really weird.
Mom, help me. But yeah, so those were just a few of the stories that I found. And provided that we don't get complaints from people who aren't getting credited for the stories that they're submitting. Thank you all, those people who did submit those to the web. I would really like to do more of those, like every month. More glitches in the Matrix.
Yeah, they're pretty. This one was way better than the last one. More entertaining. I like the stories.
You like the stories? You don't like my rambling on about simulation theory and how we've all been programmed?
Not really.
Really?
But I'm not a computer kind of geek, so...
Does it make you question your place in the universe?
No, I'm not really too worried about it.
I just thought it was a fascinating hypothesis.
Yeah.
I guess it's a theory, not a hypothesis, but
It's definitely a theory unless somebody can prove it.
And how can you prove it?
Yeah, that would just do whatever they want to do to get rid of it.
And what happens if you do prove it? Do they just turn off the program?
Then would all be gone. Poof.
Poof. And all of the atheists are right. Suddenly, poof, we're code and we're gone. But it's an interesting theory. And one of the stories that I'm going to cover here in the next few weeks is about reincarnation. There are some really compelling tales of children who've had incredibly detailed memories that don't belong to them.
Yeah, I've watched a few TV shows about that where they describe a ship he was on and all that stuff, and he would tell the people's names that he was in the Navy with and stuff, and they verified all his stuff. It was all correct, and he was never there. It was weird.
Yeah. Oh, well, he couldn't have been there because I know the story that you're talking about. It was during World War II.
Yeah, there was a
and
whole
he was like
bunch of
3
them,
or something like that. But yeah,
several of them that were like that. That they proved that he should never know any of it.
yep.
So it was pretty weird.
And imagine if reincarnation is just your code being overwritten, because when you overwrite a file, you don't really get rid of the old information until there's no more room on the drive. Then it starts to eventually be eaten. Sorry, I just hit the microphone. That's my bad. I'm sorry about that. But until then, the ghost of the information is still there. What if that's what that is? Data bleed through.
Maybe.
Another glitch in the matrix. So yeah, I really like those stories. I think they're incredibly fascinating.
Just very interesting. It's weird. Imagine going through something like that.
It's weird as fuck.
Weird as fuck.
And I think, I think it's happened to a lot of people. I've seen people who have taken photos that look like the sky is still rendering. Which could just be that your camera sucks. But
yeah, there's a lot of fucked up camera pictures of all kinds of shit.
Well, and that's the frustrating thing is that you never know. Nowadays, it's so easy to manipulate things. Did you see the deep fake video they made of Nixon? It came out, I want to say it was last week or the week before, where Nixon was talking about losing Apollo 11. We didn't lose Apollo 11. We almost lost Apollo 11, but we didn't. So they made a deep fake video and it's really convincing. So, even if somebody captures something convincing on camera, are we even going to believe it?
Not in the digital age, no. When you had film cameras, it was a little more believable because you can fuck with them so easy.
Right.
But now with the digital age, you can do all kinds of shit. And if you're really good at it, you can't tell that it's been screwed with.
So yeah, that is Glitches in the Matrix for August 2020. What'd you think?
I liked it. Well, I'm sure we'll have more.
Oh, so many more. so many more. And again, thank you to all the people who wrote in to the websites that I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. Your stories are very much appreciated. And if you'd like credit for your story, please contact us at weirdasfck@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
We'd love to interview you.
Oh,
that
my
would
God,
be
yes.
cool.
Tell me more. Until then, thank you for listening. Want to stay connected between shows? You can find us on Instagram at WeirdAsFCKPodcast, on Twitter at WeirdAsFuckPod1, on Facebook at WeirdAsFCKPodcast, or on the web at www.weirdasfck.com. There you can check out our blog, pick up some merch, send us ideas for future shows, or share your weird experiences. You might even make it on a future episode. We would love to hear from you. But until then, tune in and keep it weird.